The U.S. Supreme Court has heard arguments on a case related to Trump's executive order, which seeks to end birthright citizenship. It's a matter that affects undocumented and legal immigrants, such as Indians here on work permits. The U.S. Constitution grants citizenship to children born in the U.S. irrespective of their parents' nationality or immigration status. Multiple lower courts in the U.S., judges there having blocked Trump's ban, but the Trump administration wants the Supreme Court to decide if those judges have the right to be able to block presidential orders across the country. Okay, now the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection, or ICAP, is challenging Trump's executive order before the Supreme Court. I am joined by ICAP's legal director, that's Rupa Bhattacharyya. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a busy time for you with all the litigation in the Supreme Court, but let me ask you firstly, the Supreme Court justices are not looking directly into the merits of birthright citizenship, so to speak, but rather if a lower court ruling should be limited to each individual state and not to the whole country. Rupa, tell me, why should a single judge or a bunch of them at a lower court be allowed to have that authority nationwide?
Well, so it's a complicated question, and thank you so much for having me today. There are a number of statutes that allow for nationwide relief. So it is something that is contemplated in U.S. law, but everyone agrees that it should be done relatively rarely, so that cases can percolate in the various federal courts, and the Supreme Court, when it's ultimately presented with an issue, has the benefit of a number of judges having considered the issue and decided upon it. Our argument is that birthright citizenship is very different because it's a fundamental constitutional right, and because citizenship is so foundational to our country and to our union. It would be completely chaotic and really untenable to have citizens babies be born as citizens in one state, but not in another state, even as a preliminary matter while this case is being litigated. So in this circumstance, we do think that this is one of the rare cases where a nationwide injunction makes a lot of sense.
Rupa, what was the sense you got from the Supreme Court judges when they spoke on perhaps where they stand? What sense did you get on where they stand as far as birthright citizenship, the very core of the issue, goes?
So some of the justices didn't say anything on that topic. Those who, because it's not the issue before the court at this stage, those who did speak on the topic seemed pretty clear that they thought that the order was unconstitutional because it is birthright citizenship is a constitutional guarantee, but it's not, at least as the case is currently presented to the court, it's not likely that they will make a definitive ruling on that question at this stage, although they may, as we say, take a peek at the merits in order to determine whether or not an injunction is appropriate.
Rupa, remind us what would happen if birthright citizenship is taken away. How would it impact, say, an Indian couple working in the U.S. on an H-1B visa and decides to have a baby?
So the executive order redefines birthright citizenship from what it has been for over 100 years in this country to exclude babies whose parents are either in the U.S. illegally or in the U.S. temporarily. And so the temporary category would include anyone that is here on a work visa or a tourist visa or a student visa. And so children who are born to parents where one parent is here temporarily would not be birthright citizens unless the father is either a legal permanent resident of the United States, a green card holder, or a U.S. citizen himself. That would exclude
Rupa,
a very
very
large
quickly.
number of children.
Rupa, very quickly, running out of time here. When would we expect a ruling from the Supreme Court on the case?
It's hard to tell, but most likely not until June or the early part of July, which is when the Supreme Court term ends.
All right, thank you very much indeed for coming on Washington Watch. That's Rupa Bhattacharyya there joining us here this morning.